Hi, this is Jenny Pivor with Jenny's Muse, and today I'm bringing you a show on something that's a little bit more serious than what I've been doing in the past, and it's about recovering from loss. And this is unfortunately a topic I'm a little too familiar with since I lost my husband going on 2 years ago, and it's been difficult to get back to where I was. And I've looked at other people who are dealing with the same issue, and I know it's helpful to me. And I've invited some guests who I think have been doing just an amazing job of dealing with a similar issue, because both of these men have lost their wives. They're musicians. I'm an artist and a writer, and I found that using my interests to focus on, to bring me into the present and to make me feel as if I'm okay for a little bit is really valuable. So I've invited Ken Field, who is a renowned saxophone and flute player. He plays all over the world. He's extremely talented. He's also a composer. And unfortunately, he lost his wife a few years ago, who was an animator in Boston. And he's going to tell you all about his process. And I also have invited Darrell Katz, who is a jazz composer and a teacher at Berkeley. And he lost his wife also a couple years ago and has used music to get back on tracks. As much as we're going to get back on track, we're all working on it, and it's a process, and it's probably something, no one ever gets over, but it's a process of learning how to cope. So I hope that this show, which I find is heartfelt, will be useful to others. And I also have some words from Dr. Larry Posner, who is a psychologist in Salem, who deals with loss, and he'll be telling you his take on the subject. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you get something out of it. Thanks.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Larry Posner. I'm a psychologist in Salem, and over the years, many people have come to see me because of a major loss in their life, and the death of a spouse can be a very, very devastating loss. And the grief period is very painful. I sometimes describe it as being in an altered state of consciousness for some period of time as you process the loss of your loved one. But as the grieving goes on, the pain recedes, and people start to reconnect with the world and reconnect socially and rebuild their lives. And that's a process. There's no time frame for it. Everybody grieves differently. But the message is that grief doesn't remain permanent. You work through it. You build your support system, and you come out the other end, and you can recover.
Hi, I have Ken Field here with me today, who, as I mentioned earlier, is a renowned saxophone and flute player and a composer, and he plays all over the world. In fact, he just got back from Australia, and he's got this really wonderful, vibrant career, and yet there is a part that is very sad in that he's still dealing in a lot of ways with the loss of his wife, and I would love to talk to you about that. So welcome. And
thank you very much. Thanks very much.
Thanks for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so I know this has just been a journey for you, and can you talk a little bit about how the journey has evolved and what it was like at first as to what it's like now, and what has helped you and maybe what hasn't?
Well, I lost my wife, Karen Aqua, 7.5 years ago, after her ongoing illness of 10 years, on and off with treatments and remissions, and much time during that 10 years when she was ill of very good health and lots of activity, lots of very positive activity. But there was always, during that 10 years, a an awareness that there was something going on and continuing to go on. And it was a very challenging time, but also a very rewarding time. It was a time that I feel in our situation we were in many ways lucky to have that time, to be able to become closer, even closer during that time. In many ways it was a very treasured time.
Yeah.
When we were able to do some important things. Karen, my wife's name was Karen Aqua. She made animated films as her career, including some work for Sesame Street and some of her independent work. And she was able to complete her final film during that time. She completed a couple of films during that 10-year period. Near the end of it, when things got even more difficult, she was able to complete her final film, which was called Taxonomy, and she screened it at the ICA just a few weeks before she passed away. And that was a huge triumph and a wonderful moment, really, for her to be able to be there and be on stage and present the film. And I'm lucky to have this opportunity on March 22nd at the ICA to return there and present Karen's films. It's just a great opportunity to celebrate Karen and her work, and to be there as well. We'll be playing live soundtracks for some of these films, for a program of her films, with an ensemble of 4 alto saxophones and a drummer. That is a whole nother thing, to present her work with a soundtrack, a live soundtrack that she did not have the opportunity to authorize, so that's a whole nother thing. But
So you're honoring her with
very much.
Making her animation live on with your music. And what is that like for you to immerse yourself in that process?
We were together for 36 years, and Karen is very much a part of my life now, as she was then, before she left us. I've had so many great opportunities to celebrate Karen after she did pass away, and it, of course, is, as I said, shortly after Karen died, I've spent a lot of my life with Karen investigating and participating in the culture of New Orleans. Now that might seem like a left turn, but I'll explain why I mentioned that. The culture of New Orleans, in one particular aspect, is very interesting to me. It's a culture where death is not only mourned, but also celebrated. And where when somebody dies, musically, the tradition, the second line tradition, is of being mournful for part of the time, musically in particular, that's my focus, and then being celebratory and celebrating their life, celebrating the lives of all the people who shared time with them. And that became very much part of Karen and my lives. And I feel now that being able to do both those things simultaneously is a thing that I'm very happy to be able to do.
So I've seen your group, Revolutionary Snake Ensemble, perform many times, and way back, I remember Karen in a sequin dress with a tambourine, just full of life, dancing. She was amazing.
Yeah.
So this must be a way that you're reconnecting with her too, right?
It absolutely is. And, you know, Karen was so into the culture of New Orleans, and so much of my involvement with my group and with the travels we did to New Orleans many times is a result of her interest in New Orleans and her embracing of that culture from afar and then while we were there. And so the idea that we can now celebrate her life in that way, celebrate her work in that way, and be happy that we had the opportunity to share time with her while being, of course, sad and regretful that she's no longer here to share it with us, is very much part of that culture, and very much, I feel like I was able to absorb some of that. You know, I wasn't raised in New Orleans, I didn't live full-time in New Orleans, but we were able, I think, to absorb some of that culture and that important part of the culture, and I'm grateful for that.
It sure comes out in your music.
Mm-hmm.
It sure does. So if people haven't seen Revolutionary Snake Ensemble, I happen to know that you have a performance coming up at the Regatta Bar on March 5th. Isn't that right?
We do. We have a performance on March 5th, which is Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
And Mardi Gras night, Tuesday, March 5th at Regatta Bar. We have some special guests with the Revolutionary Snake Ensemble. We have Alonzo Demetrius is going to play trumpet, and Brian Richburg Jr. is going to play drums. Brian was raised in New Orleans and is going to bring a little of that flavor. These are young players who are really amazing and totally on the way up, and I think people will appreciate the opportunity to hear them. But we'll be playing a combination of music in the style of New Orleans, in memory of many who have passed away. We did a number of these Mardi Gras shows with Charles Neville, who we lost about a year ago, so a little over a year ago. So we will remember many people, including Karen, including Charles, and we will celebrate life and celebrate Mardi Gras.
So I remember when Karen passed away, there was an amazingly well-attended memorial at the Armory in Somerville.
Yeah.
And it was packed.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you doing a sax solo on stage that was the most soulful, beautiful, heartfelt piece of music I think I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I asked you to play at my husband's memorial, and which was also very wonderful. So what was that like for you to have your music when she died? Was that a place that you could find peace, or was not?
It was just what had to happen. It was what there were several things going on. I was so gratified to see so many people at her memorial. It was just a beautiful thing, and we showed her work, and we played some music, and people spoke about Karen. I spoke about Karen, of course, and at the end of that event, of that memorial, Karen had always said to me, I want a second line at my memorial, and I want the song I'll Fly Away played. And so what happened was that we did the memorial, and it was beautiful, and I was so moved. And then I stood up alone and played the beginning of I'll Fly Away in the tradition in the second line tradition, in the somber style. And gradually, and this moves me now, my musician friends came up one by one and joined me in playing that song. And until we had a large ensemble playing I'll Fly Away. And then we paused and we brought it up tempo. And we led a second line from the Armory in Somerville to the Growing Center, which was a couple of blocks away. And we had a big up-tempo second line with hundreds of people following us. And probably 40 or 50 people playing music, to the Growing Center where we had a reception and some food. And it was, I'm positive and I'm very, very warmed by my knowledge that it was exactly what Karen would have wanted.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure. And how was it for you? Did it satisfy something for you? Or?
Well, satisfy, I don't know. It was what had to happen.
Yeah.
You know, it was, I was happy that we did it.
Yeah.
And that my friends could join me, and that, and knowing that I had done the right thing, you know, knowing that I had done what Karen would have wanted, and that just it felt right. I mean, satisfied, I don't think that would be the word I would use. You know, I would use the word fulfilled, maybe a little bit, or grateful for sure.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Right. Well, it was, I think what you said, the second line tradition was that it was kind of mournful in some ways, but a celebration of her life too.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, you know, how can you not be grateful knowing that you had time on the planet with someone that you loved? You know, it's a time to be thankful and to be celebratory, to really celebrate them and life, you know, the opportunity that we have to be alive.
Yeah.
And to share that time and to be alive with people that we love and that we care about and that we thrive with is something to celebrate. I struggled afterwards with the conflicting emotions. Can I have these emotions simultaneously of sadness and celebration, of happiness and sadness?
Yeah.
And I concluded that yes, you can. It's hard, but you can. And I feel like that's how I grew, I think.
Well, I know my understanding of those feelings is just being so grateful that I had this wonderful person in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then feeling so sad about
of course
missing
him.
And I mean, that's what it is. And it's just, you know, you have to get on with your life. And, but I'm very grateful that you have your music that you are, you know, using to get on, because I love your music. So.
Well, thank you very much.
You're
I appreciate it. Of course, I'm grateful for that as well, and I'm grateful to be able to play my music, to present Karen's films, to play music to Karen's films, and as I said, a little bit of a struggle there because I was a little cautious about presenting a new soundtrack when she had approved the soundtracks that existed, and to play, you know, we're basically playing similar music that I transcribed for this ensemble. But
well, it's moving her into the future in a way.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I think she would have been good with it.
Yeah, I think so. I can't wait to see it. And so, is there anything else you would like to add to this, or anything you want to talk about?
Well, you know, I think Karen was a unique individual. Everyone is. Karen had her films that she created that live on, through which she continues to be present in the world. I think in that way we're lucky. I feel like I'm lucky that I have my music that maybe continues on. I feel like everyone has something that they leave in the world. And I think that they continue on in that way. We all have our contributions and the ways we've changed other people's lives. And that's a way, and the interactions we've had with other people that we love, and even people that we don't love, people that we hate. We've changed their lives, and we live on through them in some way.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, I don't know, a gratifying thing, a comforting thought for all of us.
I like it. Thanks.
Thank you.
All the natural movements of the soul are controlled by laws analogous to those of physical gravity. Grace is the only exception. Grace fills empty spaces, but it can only enter.
I tried to keep moving forward in whatever fashion that I could. I kept working. I missed 2 weeks of my teaching job.
The imagination.
They were proposing that I maybe take a leave of absence, but I didn't think that would be good for me. I thought, I'm back to my life. I'm going to go to work. And the music was incredibly helpful. I kept doing part of the music throughout the entire 7 months that she was in the hospital and after. Paula died September 15th, and we had a concert scheduled mid-October, I think it was. The rest of the group wanted to know if I wanted to cancel it, and I didn't. And we did a new spontaneous version of one of Paula's poems that was really a great one to use. And that was good. It made me cry. When Paula was in a coma, they had a recording session scheduled. And the dates of that, it was through a grant from my school using their studios, and the dates could not be changed. This was to record the group Odd Song, and I talked to the group members and I said, look, I don't know if I'm going to come to this session or not. It was all my music, they were playing it. And so you guys prepared to just go ahead without me, and they were. But I ended up going to the session. That was, in 7 months, that was one of the few days I didn't go to the hospital. And it was a very trying experience, that recording session, but it was still better than not doing it. I had one spontaneous composition. The night before the session, I took a piece of music paper and I wrote "Prayer" on it as the title. That was it. And I handed it to the players and I said, no discussion, no second takes, no anything, just play this. And they did, and it was beautiful. Purely spontaneous, their reaction to the title and what they knew I was going through. And it came out great. I was crying throughout the whole thing. And I don't have an exact process, but I kept going about my regular life. I tried hard to, make sure to sweep the floor and make the bed. Tried to take care of the cats. I kept doing all the things that I do. I couldn't really write new music for a while. I could revise old music, and music is powerful, and working on it is powerful for me. When Paula was in a coma, the JCA Orchestra had a concert, and we were playing a revised version of an old piece, and I didn't get to all of the rehearsals, but enough, and I showed up somewhat on the late side for the concerts, which normally I'm the major organizer and I let everybody else take care of everything, and rushed there from the hospital. And this was when she had just, this minor surgery had failed, and she had been unconscious for 2 weeks, which ended up being 7 weeks. And it was a very traumatic time, and I arrived at this concert and I just felt like I was on another world. But then when I got on stage to conduct the piece, I was totally into the music, and I actually smiled for a moment. Not all the time when it's right. It's really in the moment, even in the really terrible emotional state I was in. It was a long piece. It's like 17 minutes. It's right there in the moment. Since then, it's my productivity
This is the hour of lead. First chill, then stupor, then letting go. These are Emily Dickinson's apt words describing the pain of the death of a loved one and the grief that follows. The death of a loved one draws us into ourselves, into the chill and the stupor, into the numbness and self-absorption of grief. There's no guidebook for grief. We all deal with loss in our own way and at our own pace. As we work through the process of grieving, the pain slowly subsides until we can treasure the memories of our loved one while filling the void and re-engaging fully with the world.
Thanks for joining us today on Jenny's Muse. I hope that this is a show that will touch you in ways that will be helpful, and please join us again for other shows. The show comes on every month at SATV, and thank you to all my guests and those who helped in the show, and we'll see you next time.